This is a true crime podcast. It contains adult themes and content and may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
When a guard would stop and talk to you, you used to stand back and you would yell so people could hear what you were saying to that guard as they walked by or within the vicinity.
But he knew what a convict was going to do before they thought of it themselves. He just been around that long, and he was tough.
They'd find Sprocky in about every conceivable place you could imagine, which we would, of course, dump.
They'd wait until everybody was locked up, and he would open his door and run down to cell one and get a bugler can full of Sprocky and take it back to his cells.
She had a kind of a hypnotic power. There were a great many wild cats around the penitentiary, and most people couldn't get near them. But she would stand in the doorway of the cell house and say, "Kitty, kitty, kitty," and those cats would go to her.
All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Stool Pigeon Saturday. I'm excited to have a special guest, one of our staff members here, Said Bowen.
Well, it's good to be here today.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Said.
Oh, not a problem. I'm really excited about it.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, how long you've been here at the Old Pen?
I've been here at the Old Pen for 3 years. I used to work weekends, but then my schedule, piled up. Other priorities came aboard, but I still love to do guided tours here and events once in a while.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, we get so many reviews about Said's tours, so many thumbs up and 5 stars because of your tours. So, I'm happy to...
I don't mean to brag, but yeah, I'm awesome. Okay,
a
little bit braggy.
Well, what do you have for us today? I'd love to hear what you talk about.
So I want to talk about one of my favorite inmates of all time, Ernesto Blanco. Yeah. The reason I chose him over some of the other topics, I think his is like we can see the beginning of the mental health institutions rise up in America of his time period, and it's a good comparison to say, okay, this is when they started considered mental health in facilities. Today, I think we overplay it a little bit too much, especially in the court cases. Yeah. Like the first thing this defense plea mental insanity, but this is the beginning of well, maybe there's something more to the story. Yeah. And Ernesto's story is really fascinating. It's got a lot of cool factors into it. So I thought it might be nice to talk about it. I think it's underrated as well. Yeah. Compared to our most famous stories. I mean, everyone talks about Raymond Snowden or Harry Orchard, which they're awesome in their own right, but there's some that are really, really underrated. Right. Yeah. And I think he's one of them.
Nice. All right. Well, what can you tell us about Ernesto?
Well, for starters, he served in the military. He says that he served in the military immediately after World War II for a bit, and then he took part in the Korean War, so he's got that veteran experience. So that makes him too. He's, I believe, one of our 2 veterans buried in the prison cemetery. So that's probably one of the biggest highlights of that. Definitely. And he's got one of the nicest tombstones, of course.
Yeah. So that was a bit of a spoiler alert there.
Sorry about that.
He ends up in the cemetery. So what led him here in the first place?
Well, he was, according to his case file, he was in Burley, Idaho when he was listening to the radio in his car, and then a little girl asked him to come in and then listen to the radio with him, and she got in the car with him, and then they just rode around, listened to the radio for quite a long time, for over 12 hours, and of course her family's panicking. They think they kidnapped her. Someone kidnapped her. So, and then miraculously, he just dropped her off at her house. And of course, it could have been conduct against the minor. So that was the big concern of it.
Yeah. What led him to agree to, let this girl into his car to listen to the radio?
It says that he was okay at that time. He was just, wanted to come in. And it's which is the conversation for his mental health. I mean, maybe he was too trusting. I don't know. And that's why it's of course, if I was the girl's father, I would be upset too. It's we're going to go to the doctors to see anything happen to you. And then on the way to the doctors, she spotted the car, and then her father, went around this 16-mile car chase just trying to catch him, which he did, and then brought him to the police station. And that's another cool factor of the story. It's got a cool car chase.
So he's locked up. What happens to him after that?
Well, because the little girl got taken to the doctor to make sure nothing happened.
Yeah.
And the doctor said, there was no, nothing bad happened to her. So the thing with him is, what do we do with this guy? He could be considered like kidnapping or contact. He was charged with contact with a minor.
Yeah.
But that's why it was so fascinating, because they really couldn't pin on him because the doctor couldn't find anything.
Right.
So that's why sending him to the Blackfoot Insane Asylum was like their compromise, I think, because it's like, we don't know what to do with this guy. And I think that's what I'm saying. Maybe there's something more to him they wanted to find out, because, he was credentialed, he was a veteran.
Right.
So, wanted to get more deep into his story, talk to him about it. I think that's the whole purpose of sending him to Blackfoot. Which makes sense if you think about it. And I think, this is, again, the beginning where you can see of the partnership between the penitentiary and Blackfoot, which existed there before. Yeah. But we can see it now being updated to modern standards, because he seems like there's more to his story. Right. And of course he escaped from Blackfoot, and then it was found by the FBI in Texas, which is eventually what sent it up in here. And that's why they decided, okay, he's guilty, because the old saying, "Will an innocent person flee?" Right. Yeah. So that's why they made up their minds to send him to the penitentiary here.
Okay. Why? What would have prompted him to escape?
Maybe he didn't like the environment there. Yeah. Maybe they were too harsh over there. I do not know.
Or
it's like
there's nothing wrong with me. Like,
why
am I here? Yeah.
Yeah, it was like the beginning of modern healthcare for mental health care trying to figure out what was wrong with people. Maybe he didn't like it. We got these old school kind of guys who says there's nothing wrong with me. I don't need to talk about what that definitely could be the thing that helped him escape. I don't want to put up with this.
Yeah, and we see a lot of people who act insane. They act crazy so that they can go to the state hospital south in Blackfoot. Yeah, and then once they're there, they're completely fine, and then they escape because there are armed guards. It's nurses and doctors that are watching them, not these professional guards and police officers around. So I was curious if maybe he was feigning some insanity to escape, or if I don't know if you've come across anything along those lines, or if it was
I did not, but that could be considered that. I'm like, the lesson has bargained. But I think he had a good case set up for him if he wanted to play the defense. I'm like, because if he really did nothing wrong, and I think he's got a clean record. He served in the military twice. Right. It's like, I think he could have pulled it off by having not a guilty charge or maybe misdemeanor. I'm like, just don't pick up random kids. But it's like, I think the moment he escaped is when they realized, no, he's guilty of something.
Do you know, was he intoxicated when he picked her up? Was he drinking or anything?
He was a little bit. He was drinking a little bit.
So that probably had some factor. I know that Lou Clapp, the warden around 44 through 66, he was really pushing towards AA and having things for alcoholics and trying to help them. And I know Blackfoot had a new session to try to help people with that. So I wonder I don't know if he had that issue, if alcoholism was his issue, or if I don't know. Yeah.
Alcoholism. I looked at his record and it's like, not to the degree, but he was technically legally intoxicated when he was there. So and that's harsh. I'm like, because it's like, if you're trying to be on AA, I'm like, I just drank that one time and I shouldn't really be here. Maybe that could be considered to his escape effort, because they definitely had some AA programs here, and that's another cool topic that they had here that I think it's very underrated. So hopefully it gets talked about in the future.
Definitely, I kind of mentioned it a little bit because alcohol is a factor in so many crimes. To this day, right this moment, there are
DUIs,
countless people across the country.
It's like besides DUIs, you got like alcohol enticing fights, so it plays into assault charges, and so it's like it's really that bad.
It's a huge motivator, huge problem, huge issue that we'll always have probably.
That's not gonna go away.
Right.
Although I think now it's outdone by texting, so that's probably the big part of it. So maybe you can fix texting, but alcohol, I don't think we can.
Yeah. Anyway, so he's brought to the prison. He's found in Texas after escaping from the state hospital. They capture him in Texas. They bring him back to the Idaho State Penitentiary. Do you know anything about his incarceration? What it was like?
He was actually considered a trustee here. He did well. When we had the blood drives here, he donated his blood. He was actually quite behaved well. So, which plays into account. Maybe he was okay in the mental state. I mean, maybe he should have stayed where he was in Blackfoot without escaping. So he was, I mean, he was quite well. He didn't cause any problems, which led him, which is sad because he was stabbed to death in the prison grounds. So he died here.
Wow.
Yeah. Stabbed by Earl Bowen, I believe. That's
Earl Bowen.
Yeah.
And if any of you listen to our Halloween episode, you know what happens to Earl Bowen later after he kills Ernesto. But any idea of what would lead Ernesto to be stabbed to death?
According to Earl, he didn't just like the man. Like, they did not get along. Maybe he... Like, that's one thing I've actually discussed with a lot of guests that come here. And they asked me, I'm like, was there some kind of struggle between just your average inmate with the trustees? Did they have some kind of jealousy? Did they have? And I assumed that they did because they got the better jobs. They had their own dormitory. Eventually moved outdoors, and it's like, you think that they would hold a grudge against certain inmates, and he was a trustee eventually. So.
Yeah, and he's a trustee, and he's in for lewd and lascivious conduct. He's in for touching a child, know, and that's what everybody else
thinks. Maybe he didn't like him, he considered he's a pedophile.
Exactly.
He's better off without him.
And they are the lowest of the low.
And here they are.
Prison. Still to this day, So, I mean, maybe he was in protective custody, but do you know where he was working? Any idea of
He was in the laundry for a bit. He was in the shirt factory. He got moved around. There's some that... get moved around. Heck, even the ones who have the steady jobs, actually do other jobs. Like recently I found out that Harry Orchard did beekeeping. That's something I did not know before. And it's like, wow, I thought he was just in charge of the shoe factory early on and then chicken. So I guess they do mix it up once in a while.
Yeah. He went from the shoe man in the 20s to the turkey or the chicken man and then to the bee man.
Right?
We have photos of him in all those different positions.
Eras, so it's weird. So makes sense. He did work mostly in the laundry though. I did remember that.
Yeah, there's so many jobs that they did out here. It's wild.
It's insane.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, what else about his story? Can you talk about his burial and?
Well, his burial is because he was a veteran. The military offered to pay for his his gravestone, and that's something I wonder if it was protested against. Because what you said before is true. The pedophiles are considered the lowest of the low. Heck, even first-degree murderers get more respect than pedophiles, which is really interesting way when you think about the psychology of the inmates inside prison. So he's still, whatever he did or not, I'm like the military side, he served in the military twice, so I think he deserves a military grave. Whatever he did or not is guilty, And I find that honorable in some way. In this day and age, even if you're a good person, if you're caught doing something bad, even if it's small, you're blacklisted for life. It seems like we've become like a society that sees everything black and white, and for the military at that time in the 60s when he died, it's like to see it. That's completely irrelevant to his time. Let him have his gravestone. So he's one of the 2 military gravestones out there. So I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I did try to find out more about his family, but I couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm like, I looked and I was like, nope. I mean, because you would think they would want him, maybe not, because pedophilia is considered lowest of the low. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's so surprising. I'm super curious if they got full military honor burial or if it's just they got the headstone and it was 5 convicts digging 6 feet into the ground and burying him.
It seems they just got the headstone. I did not see any traces of a military burial.
Right? Yeah. No, salutes or anything like that. Yeah. Oh.
No, I guess because it was prison. I mean, if you are buried in a cemetery, especially in a vet cemetery, you do get full honors, and it's. I actually had the privilege to see one of those military burials. It's fascinating. It's one of the coolest signs of respect I ever seen.
Yeah.
They show our veterans. I'm like, it's amazing. But I don't think he got that honor.
What entailed the one that you saw? I've never seen one.
So what I saw, they basically, they have your regime right there, and they not only narrate your life, but what you did as a soldier, especially your honors and how you served your country, and they do feel like veterans don't get as much of respect as they should. And they just said, this is the least we can use, just give you that. And from what I've heard now from talking to people, is like now that you have to apply to actually get a veteran grave. So it's like, oh man.
Interesting. Yeah.
So that's horrible. And of course they have sometimes gunfire to salute your
That's what I always picture.
Yeah,
I think I've seen
they
it in
do
movies
that.
and things like
At
that.
least from the last time I saw one, that was a while ago. I don't know if it's changed. And I know that I don't know if the Navy does it differently because they all do it too.
Yeah,
I would choose it Sea because I love the water.
Nice. All right, Said. Well, I mean, this is a story about a man who made a stupid mistake.
While intoxicated a little bit.
Right, and it leads him to prison, and he's murdered here. This is where his life ends, and that's heartbreaking. But there's still some honor at the end, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think it's one of those stories that has a little bit of everything. It is a tragic story. Yeah. It's got a cool car chase, but it's got that honorable of this man who served his country and at least somewhat reaped the reward for it.
Right. Yeah.
So with his military stone. And for those of you who've been out there, it's those graves are not the best, but they're actually the nicest gravestones, and you can definitely tell.
Absolutely. These military honor ones are really nice. Yeah. Nice. Well, anything else you want to say before we call it off?
No, I think this is good. I think I hit my points entry, and I hope people find this story interesting.
Yeah.
That gives people an idea how far we've come in the mental institute and how to evaluate people. Because, today we got prisoners that do, say he's insane when in reality they're taking advantage of the system. But at least that resources is there to help those people who actually do need it. So there's just got to be a better way of stop being prevented from the system being taken advantage of. You know? Just like all good things, it's going to get taken advantage of. So hopefully it gets fixed. But I like his story is the beginning of where the mental health actually mattered. And that's why I think it's a good pinpoint to start. The 60s, the civil rights movement during that area was the beginning of, certain issues like this.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, great, Said. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, if I were to say do your own time, what would you say?
Do my own time?
Yeah. If I told you do your own time, how would you respond?
I'm innocent.
I love it. All right, everybody.
Innocent until proven guilty, no matter what Twitter says.
Said, you are awesome. Thank you.
All right, thank you for having me.
Everybody, do your own time, do your own number, and we'll see you next week.
If you enjoyed Behind Gray Walls, please rate, review, and subscribe so others can find our podcast. If you're interested in more Old Idaho Penitentiary information and to see the mugshots of the inmates featured in this episode, follow the Old Idaho Penitentiary on Instagram and Facebook. If you want to learn more about the Idaho State Historical Society and its other sites, follow ID State Historical Society on Instagram or visit history.idaho.gov. If you have a question or comment for the hosts, which we love to get, please email us at behindgraywalls@gmail.com.
Prison violence is different. It's more down to earth. It's more real. It's not like an army against another army. For instance, here we were waiting to go up into the dining room one day. A fellow tapped me on the shoulder and a couple of others said, excuse me. We thought he was going through the line. Instead of that, he walked up behind another fellow and stabbed him and killed him. So,
did you see that?
Yes. We were only 3 feet away. We couldn't miss.
What did you do?
Walked right by.
And how did you feel then?
Well, this is a type of violence that's really violence. It's violent. It's not, something you just read about. Mm-hmm. It's real. When you see real violence, then you have this thing that you think about. For instance, the people in the penitentiary don't like people who are convicted of sexual crimes or crimes against women. They say, well, it could have been my mother or my sister. And this is the thing that goes on. So it becomes more real to you.
Were you afraid ever here?
Oh, no.
But some people were.
Oh, yes. Lots of them were.